If you have not subscribed, please click the like button, share and subscribe. It's free.
You see, in South Africa, if you are able to protect the multinational companies, you get promoted. Cyril Ramaphosa made sure people are killed there for asking 12,000. And now he's promoted being a president to make sure that he keep the interest of the capitalist. What we saw in 1960 in Sharpeville, what we saw in past years is still happening in so-called democracy. These people are killing us. If these people are here to kill us, let them go. If these people are here to dig holes and leave us nothing, let them go.
South Africa has 90% of the world's platinum, 80% of manganese, 73% of chrome, and 40% of gold. We are ranked in the top 10 for coal, iron, and uranium. So theoretically, we should all be rich, right? But who owns the minerals underground? How exactly should we be mining them, for instance? And why do we criminalize zamazamas and let large mining companies get away with theft, as some have said, and even murder?
As a street lawyer,
Street lawyer, okay.
qualified by the street, I'm speaking to the ordinary South Africans. It is time we stand up for our land. You can hear here, we are only talking about corporations, investors, but we're not talking about you, the owner, the native. This land is yours, and we must take ownership, we must get organized, and people like you, Mish, you need to up your game so that we can be better educated. We are confronted by the monsters, the devils, people who don't love us, and they are bought, they are sponsored. So it is time we take our fight to the street. We need to close the mines. If they're not benefiting us, we need to.
Our own president, shares kuma company, I think plus minus 10 or 15. Our own president. Then the other officials, they are also involved. Okay. Then now what are we saying as people of South Africa? We need to stand up, stop.
2 points I want to make. First of all, I don't believe in our political system because it has failed us dismally. Nothing has improved. I'm so disappointed in my own president, Ramaphosa, because the only thing he could say to the massacre is, I'm sorry. No changes. Right now we have a mine in our auction. We're not benefiting anything out of it. But the ones who has given the legislations and the laws and how you acquire a license in my backyard to mine my own minerals, they're getting more money. And they're getting more healthier. We are getting more sick because these minerals you are digging out, they're affecting us. And you don't care about us. So let us stop funding the politics or helping the politics. Let us stand and be Abantu, Ubuntu, and back to the kid.
It's a pervasive issue. I mean, if you go to any mining area in the country, for example, we have activists that we work for in Mpumalanga. The roads are black with tar. Children are suffering from kidney stones. Children as young as 10 years old. People have their water being poisoned. Yet these companies make millions, up to hundreds of millions every year. And it's two things. Primarily, it's the fact that, again, as Dale was alluding, this is about how an economy functions under capitalism. In order to remain alive as a private enterprise, I must stay competitive, I must reduce risks, I must maximize my profits, and I must increase costs. That means I must put profits before people. My concern isn't about the community. That's a legal obligation that I may have to fulfill. It's about my shareholders. My shareholders need returns on their investments. But secondly, what you have is a government that has a very dysfunctional relationship with the private sector and capital as well.
How so?
As was alluded to before, in fact, many of the policies that we've seen since 1996 reflect the interests of international and domestic capital. If you look at the austerity measures, if you look at the inability to control and regulate illicit financial flows, if you look at the fact that 75% of workers in South Africa earn about 5,500 Rand a month. And yet the private sector talks about we need to do away with minimum wage and have more accessible labor. You have a state that actively colludes with capital to be able to execute its interests.
So, well, we have to capacitate communities for them to be able to challenge the very same government, business, and the unions. And if people have knowledge, they will be able to act. But the mine itself don't even respect Section 24 of the Constitution, which says we've got the right to live in an environment that is not harmful and so on. But nothing happens to those people. It's because government and the business, they live together. We have a regulation that regulates mines, MPRDA law. The MRE is the useless department in South Africa because mines are mushrooming all over the place because they give licenses without making sure protocol or everything is followed. And now we have people facing collusion and everything. Lastly, mine came into South Africa and did not rehabilitate. And when we don't rehabilitate, it's a criminal issue that they should have been charged for doing that. In Bethany, Derco mined for 2 years without a license. And we've been talking to DMR communities, tried to stop that mine.
Okay.
And they were brutally hit by police. 80% of the economy is owned by few elites.
So the few benefit from a large chunk of money. Herman,
businesses are incentivized to cater to political interests through things like BEE. BEE sounds like it's supposed to empower black ordinary South Africans, but if you look at it, it's empowering a small elite at the top like President Ramaphosa, like Patrice Motsepe, and the poorer black people of South Africa are not gaining that advantage.
Whose fault is that?
Well, it's a fault of policy. The scorecard should be about how are you empowering your communities. You should be getting points for how many schools you are building,
Fair enough.
how many houses you are building, how good you are for your community.
Is broad-based black economic empowerment part of the problem?
It's, it's a good in theory, but in practice, it's just like a lot of our law. The things are not implemented, so it's only a small group that benefits. But I wanted to get into this point about power. The bottom line is workers and poor people are simply not represented in the political class.
Break that down for us.
Politics has become about money. Who spends the most money usually gets there. If you don't have money, you don't participate. Simple as that.
Money buys you access.
And so you have increasing amounts of people left out of the political system. The biggest winner in our elections was the no vote. Why is that the case? Because people are saying enough. We don't believe in the system anymore because nobody represents us. So if you have the same people, politicians, people who run banks, people who run mines, everything else. They go to the same country clubs. They send their kids to the same private schools. They send their kids. Of course, they're going to take care of each other. Meanwhile, all the rest of us are left to the side.
Lisa, if the situation is as Dale is describing, how do we begin to go about accountability, especially accountability for people who've wronged the poorest of the poor, who don't have access to a top advocate?
I want to first address Upuja about the BEE. I think it's important we should remember who financed the BEE deals. It was the big banks. And it's often put that, okay, BEE, the face of it is black people, this.
No, it was white business. It was white
precisely,
business.
It was white.
And they are still exploiting BEE
Yes.
to this day.
Precisely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed. And in terms of accountability, I think the state has the legislature to regulate these industries more. The state has the judiciary to ensure that the people that are found to have committed the crimes, we have the courts that are supposed to help prosecute and put those people into jail.
It becomes difficult, right, when you tell someone like Mr. Sekgoto who's been waiting, how much longer do you wait?
Can I just quickly say something? I studied law. The legal system has withheld accountability, and then you have absurd legal fees that makes accountability even more difficult for people to get. So just the affordability of legal advice, of legal aid, I think is also something that the legal fraternity should look at.
Isabel, I'll let you have a go.
And this is why I gave up private practice, because I thought that in a country where so few people can afford lawyers, there is no correlation between law and justice. And so that's why I went into social justice in order to fight for justice. But I think that law, healthcare, education, should be seen as the public good, and they should not be privatized. We cannot have an equal society when some people's education takes them into a different sort of stratosphere, where someone can have an operation and other people have to wait for months and months and months and don't have medicine in their clinic. We call ourselves a mixed market economy, but we're not. And the concern about...
What are we really at this point?
We're a market economy. I mean, basically, there's a move towards privatization, monopoly, and also state monopolies. I mean, the state-owned enterprises. But we do not have that counterbalance of social democracy. People saying South Africa is a social democracy. We are not. There is no point in which the state is the one that provides decent quality public goods for people.
Why then be opposed to privatization? I would say that if we want to disentangle these concentrations of power, the citizen as an individual, rather than the conglomerate of the abstract state, would be the best way to go about it.
That's an academic.
I mean, but that's not a
Hang
counter.
on a second. The counter argument is this: if you privatize within a capitalist economy, those who have capital will get the benefit. That's the argument. No. Hang on a second. Basically, if you have a society that's much more equal, where everybody has that opportunity, then people can take things into their own hands. If you say privatize Eskom or privatize this, who's going to own those things? Not the people. Not the people. Not the people.
The point about the extraction of surplus, I mean, that is what we're talking about. So where you have schools listed on the stock exchange, where you have private medical aids listed on the stock exchange, it means surplus that you and I pay doesn't go into the service. It goes into the hands of shareholders. And that is the point about privatization, is that there's an extraction of surplus which does not benefit the whole community. What we need is a cross-subsidization. If I have more, I put it into the system. Someone who doesn't have as much can take out from the excess that I put in, not going into some third party's shareholders' hands. That is the problem about privatization. Right. We see that at Eskom. What is load reduction rather than load shedding? It basically means that Alex and those poorer areas get cut off. The suburbs don't get cut off anymore. It means that you are concentrating the cost of being poor amongst the poor only.
We showed you South Africa in 2012, 16 of August. We confronted the system and you ignored us. South Africa, it is time you demonstrate that this land is the land of your ancestors. Stop sleeping. Let's stand up and unite. Let us work from our strength. We need investors who can listen to us. They need our minerals. We need investors who can even produce final products of our minerals. Not the investors who loot our raw material. No, it's time we stand.
Last year, South Africa's economy was down. We have had the unemployment rate at record levels. These people made hundreds of billions. They are not really incentivized to care about the interest because whatever happens, they are good.
So, Isabel, how do we fix that when you hear from workers such as Mr. Sokoto, where you're exploited basically during employment, then there is an order that says your former employer should pay you this money, yet the people who are supposed to make sure that all of that is happening are seemingly not doing their jobs?
Well, it does seem that we have different laws in this country. We have the Constitution, which is meant to guarantee everybody equal rights and the rule of law. But if you are not in the top elites, it seems that law doesn't protect you. And I think that's one of the aspects that we need to be looking at in terms of broader aspects of inequality as well. Because why should people respect and honor laws if they're not going to be protected? We have private pension funds where they have billions of unclaimed benefits, and they do very little to try and track down the people
who... Do they simply decide not to pay because they know that there'll be no real consequences?
I wouldn't like to venture into what they think, but I think that the evidence certainly suggests that they're very happy to take people's monthly premiums, but when it comes to paying out the benefits, they are not there. Why is it that the state, the regulators, are not doing as much in order to make that happen? Point about the Mzansi account, which was meant to have been created about 15 years ago to give everybody free banking accounts. None of the banks have lived up to their obligations in terms of that. And it comes back to how do we let the private sector run right, paying very, very low taxes, but they're not part of their whole obligation to move and develop this developing country that we have. Instead, they just profit like the mines, so the financial sector extracts.
What do we do about a financial sector that seems to be operating without any form of accountability?
The South African economy is wrongly incentivized, I think, in the sense that over the last 20 years, 2 trillion rand has gone into meeting BEE requirements. We have a system that under apartheid and under the ANC is now, if you can please the government rather than the people, you will get your business going. And I think that's a fundamental error. It should be about being a responsible corporate citizenship and not just pleasing the politicians.
Dale?
My thoughts are very simple. We are in a situation where we need to reclaim our power. Real democracy lies with people. If people start believing that we can contest these things that we're all complaining about, we can change these things. We can. I go back to the organize or starve, organize or die, everyone together.
Mr. Mangula.
We need to look at the issues of Zamazamas being formalized and not having these so-called investors coming here to steal minerals and leave us with nothing. Thank you.
Herman Torres.
We are in a country where the incentives are wrong. The incentives are to please and enrich further an elite political class, whether that was the Broederbond or whether that is BEE. The big enemies of economic freedom are big government, big business, and big labor. And I think if we could re-incentivize what goes on in this country, that everyone who has skills can offer those skills in return for a salary, removing as many barriers to entry into the economy as possible, and not keep on enriching the same elite few at the top. Everyone in this room have God-given skills, God-given talents, and a good economy is one where you can use those to earn a living, and that's not what we have.
Firstly, the workers need to own and control their workplace. And secondly, the rich will never care for the public. And so it's imperative that we use the power of the state to tax them, and tax them more.
Andile, what say you?
There's been a
u-Ethel Voya lona eMarikana. NdeyaseMarikana nje. Yenye into esingayazi ukuthi yenzeka kanjani. Ukubulala abantwana behleli kanje. 1. Inkokheli zala eMzantsi. Sithengisa ngegazi lingenacala. Kubantu abazokwenza imali la eMzantsi. Kuthengiswa ngathi. Kuvele kuthiwe asuka umuntu eLondon ezovula imayini la. Mezovula imayini athi nanizobhadala imali ethile. Ithi president yethu mnezama igusha ngiqhela uzicheba nasebusika. Siqodole. Imali asitholi true ubugreedy benkokheli zala eMzantsi. Kubhlungu namhlanje imizivaliwe. Akho say akho ntoni eMarikana, kubhlungu into eseMarikana. Kubhlungu eseMarikana akho ndlela. Akho mbana, akho manzi. But yenza iminyaka emingaphi imasaka yaseMarikana.
12 years kulo nyaka.
Akho nto sibonayo. Kushuthi kwabulawa izinja ezingenzanga nto. Buphi ubuntu egqibeleni. Ndikhumbula mhla sathi sise ofisini ye-community. Sadutyulwa sihlelele ofisini ye-community. Besuke entabeni. Bezodubula abantu abaselokishini emkhukwini. Iwek ngamajoni futhi. And at that time besidubula sihlalele. Sizilungiselele into zethu kuba singabamama. Sifuna ukuya pha entabeni so save abatata abasizobaphi. Siyabaphekela, sibenzela yonke into. But kwafika amasoja. Ubaba zodubula abantu entabeni bengenzanga nto.
Nkosina, I'll take more questions in a moment, but I think at this point it's worth pausing and just getting reflections from the panel. Isabel.
The tragedy of that story speaks through in a lot of people's stories that they've been sharing today. Just the elite compacts managed to sew up profits for themselves, but the reality of ordinary people who have been marginalized. We can talk about statistics. We can talk about 12 million unemployed adults. We can talk about the fact that we have the highest inequality in terms of wealth. We can talk about the fact that if you're born into privilege, your life trajectory will never be the same as someone who doesn't have that social capital. Government is not ensuring that people have a better life. This is 30 years of our democratic dividend. Those monies have been deducted from workers' salaries month in and month out. Why is it that this country is not giving to people what they have? And why is it that if a Zama takes, as you said earlier, they're a criminal. If an overseas mining company takes, they're allowed to not only prosper, but to not pay taxes in this country. Right. The inequality and the devastation is just a tragedy.
Mishak, I'll let you have the final
project that's been unfolding since 1996, in which those who have economic power within the private sector and internationally are attempting to continue a regime of exploitation and oppression. If the rich have been winning since 1996, the rest of us have been losing since 1996. And as Dale says, it's about people's power. What we have to do through our organization and our advocacy and our activism, we have to make the government more scared of us than they are as scared of disappointing the private sector.
Isabel Fry?
We've got an export-oriented growth path, so it doesn't matter how poor people are in this country because it's not what we buy, it's what we export. That's also why we have a currency that counts against us in high interest rates. We need to look at the way in which people can take back people's power. If we don't, any new government is going to continue with the same macroeconomic framework that looks not at growth and employment, but at debt and inflation. That's not going to grow the economy. We're going to have the same austerity, cutting spending on education and schools and on basic grants and benefits. What we need to be saying is that redistribution that stopped in 1996 with the introduction of GEAR needs to be set aside, but we can no longer continue to be exploited because otherwise the next 5 years of this new administration is going to make today look like child's play.
Isabel, thank you for that. Napoleon.
Family, what do you think about this big debate? What they think about Cyril Ramaphosa? Because when you listen to all the speakers who are speaking there, it shows that the president is not working for the South African people. And what really shocked me is the Marikana case. He only just sent an apology after so many people were killed. And the dilapidation that is going on within the areas of the mines whereby our people stay. We know very well mines make a lot of money in South Africa, and there are foreign companies that are taking the gold. As we know that South Africa has got so much minerals on the ground. We've got gold, platinum, diamonds, a lot of minerals, gold, whatever you name it. But the people who are working in the mines, places where they stay, the roads are not tarred. They only put coal on the roads. When cars run there, the dust go up and it causes sickness to our people. But these are companies, they care about profit. They don't care about the welfare of the people. Why is that? The problem is in the leadership. Because as we listen to everybody who has spoken there, all arrows are pointing to the president, that he's not doing anything. Which means the government is part of this business. They are getting a lot of money from there, and they are doing business with these companies that come from outside to dig all the minerals. Because he has got shares, Cyril himself, within all the companies. As long as we have a president that is compromised in that seat, in that office of presidency, we'll never get anything right. Now they are coming with this GNU, which is not GNU, it's a coalition. It's just an arrangement for DA and ANC. Because all the small parties that they try to bring around them, it doesn't make it a coalition. But in the face of the people, they want it to look like that. They always say it's a GNU. Because if people lie and say one and the same thing to people, it becomes the fact. People, they adapt to life and like, okay, because they are telling us this is GNU, let's go with that. Exactly, it's not GNU. We are very, very disappointed with our president, Cyril Ramaphosa. And history will judge him. And it will judge him harshly. I don't care how he sees things now as he is in the office of presidency, but time will come for him to be out of that office. And a lot of whims will follow him. Because the same people that are incubating him around him, those people who are incubating him are the same people who will reveal the facts once he leaves the office. They are the ones that will put the guns on him. Because a lot of things will be revealed and he will be in and out of court because of the things that he is doing behind the scenes, being protected by these big businesses. Oppenheimer, helping him in everything. But one day, you will have to respond to the South Africans. Why did you hate black people like this? Family, all that has been said there. As you have listened, let's see how you can comment, but comment respectfully. And make sure you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I love you all, guys. Bravo, bravo.